Hey guys, so we're going to be reading about doing lesson 3 today. So if you will go and pull up your iReady lesson, it will be lesson 3 right here, and it's about reading about time and sequence. So let's read the learning target. Go ahead and pull your bow and arrow back and shoot once. And let's read the learning target. Using time and sequence words will help you understand how events in a story are connected, or events in history are connected. Sorry, guys. So that's what we're going to be working on. We're going to be understanding how those time and sequence words help us understand events and how those events are connected. So this blurb says, do you like a good story? Then you probably enjoy history. History is the story of events that happened in the past. Historical events are usually told in sequence, which is the order in which they happen. This sequence can help you understand the relationships or connections between those events. When you read, look for signal words that give you clues about time, order, and sequence. First, next, and finally are signal words. So are phrases such as later that year and in 1864. So guys, when you're looking for reading a text that's about history, you can look for those signal words like first, next, then, finally. And also anytime that it says later and then a year, right, like 1864, are specific years that will help you understand when events happen and to put them in the correct order. So if you want to scroll down or look at your activity 1, it's on there too, if you're following along on your activity. So we're going to look at this cartoon and we're going to see what is happening and think about how those events are connected or related, right? So looking at the picture here, I see it says a picture about a boat and some people sailing on a boat. And underneath the first box says, first, the Vikings sailed to North America. First is one of those signal words that tells me about a time and sequence. So this is the first thing that happened. So the Vikings sailed to North America. So to give you a little background on who the Vikings are, they are people that lived in it's called Scandinavia, which is these countries of Norway, Denmark, and Sweden. So the Vikings lived here. And from the comic, we can see that they traveled or sailed on a boat because back in their time, that was the main way to travel. There were no cars, there were no airplanes. So they traveled by boat, right? And they sailed from Scandinavia, like right here, all the way around to like Iceland, Greenland, even like Canada, right? So over here, this is called like North America. So our comic will be about how the Vikings sailed from right over here in Norway and Denmark, and they sailed over to North America in like this area right here. Okay. So now let's pop back over. A little history lesson for you. So the Vikings sailed to North America. That was the first thing that happened. Then I'm looking here, and then I see the Vikings. They're like building fences and houses. There's like a little road. And it says next they started a settlement. So I'm like, okay, so I think a settlement is like a village, a place where people live. So that was the next thing that happened. So it's saying first they came to North America. Then once they were here, they started a settlement, right? A place to live. Now I'm looking at my third picture and I see the Vikings are back on a boat and their boat is going the other way than it was in the first picture. And it says after a few difficult years, the Vikings gave up and returned home. So now I'm like, after, my keyword, after they started the settlement, then the last thing is they had some difficult years, right? So they found out it was pretty tough making this settlement and living here in North America. And so then they decided, we're going to go back home. Right? So they traveled back to Norway, Sweden, Denmark, right? Their home. So I'm thinking about, how do those events all connect together, right? So I have my sequence words that tell me the order that they happened. And now I'm thinking, how do those go together? So if you scroll down and look at your little chart here, so it says the topic is the Vikings sail to North America, which is what our comic here was about. And so now I need you to fill in, pause and fill in what happened first, what happened next, and then what happened after a few years. So go ahead and pause your video and fill in that chart. Hey, welcome back. Hopefully you paused and filled in your chart, and we'll quickly go over it. So you should have found out that first, what the Vikings did was sail to North America. So in your box, you should have written sailed to North America. Then the next thing they did after they sailed to North America was they started a settlement, or you could have said started a village, made a home, right? That was what they did next. And then finally, after a few years of living here, they decided that it was too difficult and they gave up and returned home. So in this box, you should have typed the Vikings gave up and returned home. So what do you think is the connection between those events? How is this event, the first event, connected to the next event? How is the next event connected to the last event? So think for a second, how do those events go together? So hopefully you're thinking that, well, the first event, they sailed to North America, and then it's connected because once they were there, they created a place to live. And then hopefully you connected this, the second event, to the last one, and saying that after they had lived there for a little while, they thought that it was too hard here, and they wanted to go back to their home. So they gave up their village here, and then they got back on their boat and returned to where they had come from. A great job if you figured that all out. Hopefully you have that all filled in. So on our next, we're going to do, you can go back in your, not there, in your iReady book or on your screen. And now we're going to read The Adventures of the Growing Nation. So again, let me give you a little background information about this. So when the settlers first came to North America and the United States, right, we had settlers in what we call these 13 original colonies. They were right here, like along the East Coast. There were 13 colonies, which are now like states, where most of the people who traveled here lived, right? Because remember, they were coming by airplane? No, they came by boat, right? So most people stopped right along here. They didn't really go see what else was on the rest of the land in the country. But as time went on, right, more and more people came. They were too cramped in just these 13 states. So then some people said, I want to see what else is out there. And so then the United States expanded. So at the time that we're reading this article, the United States was right here, all to where this red is. Those were the established, like, part of the United States. The rest of the United States, this land was owned by other countries. So this yellow part was owned by France, and this green part was owned by Spain, right, and the Spanish people. They had explored and came and said that this land was theirs. So what we're going to read about in the article is that one of the presidents, Thomas Jefferson, he made a deal with France to buy the land here that was theirs. So that was called the Louisiana Purchase. So this yellow part, why it's called Louisiana, is it was called the Louisiana Purchase. So then, once President Jefferson bought this land, he needed some people to go explore it, right, and see what this land was like, what was out there. Right? So that's where we're going to pick up and read our story and find out about President Thomas Jefferson and this Louisiana Purchase and who went and explored this land. So you can follow along with me while we read. Remember, think and look for those time and sequence words. Look for any dates or words like first, next, then, after that, as we're reading to see what order these events in history happened. Okay? So follow along and read out paragraph 1. So imagine that in one day our country doubled in size. That's what happened to the United States in 1803. I know this is a date that's important. President Thomas Jefferson asked France to sell the United States a vast area of land. Overnight, America added more than 828,000 square miles of land west of the Mississippi River. Now, this is known as the Louisiana Purchase. So that Louisiana Purchase is when President Jefferson bought all that land west of the Mississippi River. That was in yellow right here. Bought it from the country of France. So now we're going to see what happened after that. Jefferson wanted to know the fastest way across the new land. At the time, there were no maps of the whole country. Jefferson asked Meriwether Lewis to explore the area. Lewis was an army captain whom Jefferson trusted. Lewis chose another soldier, William Clark, to help him lead the party. Hmm, some understanding of Thomas Jefferson, the president, asked Meriwether Lewis to go and explore the new land, and Lewis got his buddy William Clark to help him on this expedition. So let's see what happened after that on their journey. To get ready, they first had a large boat built. The boat took the men down the Ohio River. Then they built a base camp near St. Louis, Missouri. They spent the winter of 1803 there. Finally, on May 14, 1804, Lewis and Clark began their famous trip into the new territory. 50 men went with them. I have lots of sequence words here and some dates that are going to help me in my next part. They traveled for over 18 months. Finally, the group made it to the Pacific Ocean on November 7, 1805. Clark wrote, "Ocean in view, oh, the joy." The group spent a long, cold winter near the ocean. Then they began the trip back home in March 1806. Lewis and Clark arrived in St. Louis in September 1806. Lewis and Clark arrived. Oh, sorry, I just put that again. Reading again. They were greeted with a big party. A century later, 100 years, in 1904, the World's Fair was held in St. Louis. People honored Lewis and Clark's journey at the fair. So now, if you go into your back into Activity 1, you're going to see the same chart right here, and you're going to pause it and complete this chart. So let me give you some directions before you begin. So this is the timeline chart all about Lewis and Clark's exploration. So we're going to put the events of their journey and exploration in order. So it gave me the first thing that happened. The first event was that President Jefferson asked Meriwether Lewis to explore the new land. So what you need to do is fill in what happened in winter 1803 and fill that in here. What happened in May 1804 and fill that in here. What happened in November 1805 and fill that here. And then what happened in September 1806 and fill that in here. So go ahead and pause your video and go ahead and fill that in. When you're finished, you can press play again. Hey, welcome back. I'm glad you paused your video and got that information. So let's review it and make sure you can check and see if you got it right. So in winter 1803, I go back to my text. Not that one. In winter of 1803, what happened? So after President Thomas Jefferson bought the land in 1803, what did he do? And I see right here, winter of 1803. So then, what happened then? That was when, right, the boat took the men down the Ohio River, and then they built a base camp near St. Louis, Missouri. They spent the winter of 1803 there. So what I would have written in my chart is that winter of 1803, the men, which would be Lewis and Clark and their party of other people who went with them, they built a base camp near St. Louis, Missouri. So that should be what you put right here. Then in May 1804, let's see then what happened. May 14th, 1804, Lewis and Clark began their famous trip into the new territory. Great. So in that box, you should have put May 14th, 1804. Go back and look at my text. Lewis and Clark began their famous trip to explore the new territory, which would go right here. Then November 1805. There it is. And then what happened there? If you read around it, we say the group made it to the Pacific Ocean. So I put Lewis and Clark's group made it to the Pacific Ocean, which is all the way on the other side of the United States. So they went from St. Louis all the way to the ocean over here. And then their final event in September 1806, they began the trip back. Oh no, that was March. Let's make sure I lost it. 1806. in March, they went back home. And then in September,